Jasmine Carter boarded Skyline Airlines Flight 323 with a confident smile and a first-class ticket in hand. A rising star in the world of business and innovation, she had earned every ounce of comfort that seat promised. Plush leather, priority service, peace. But comfort would be the last thing she'd find at 30,000 feet as she settled into seat 2A. A flight attendant approached her with a tight-lipped smile and an apologetic tone that didn't match her eyes. "I'm afraid there's been a mix-up," the woman said. "You'll need to move to economy." Jasmine blinked. "I'm sorry." The explanation was vague, almost rehearsed. Something about an overbooking. No apology for the inconvenience. No offer to explain why she, of all passengers, had been singled out. Seconds later, a white man in khakis and a loose tie eased into her vacated seat without a glance in her direction. No questions were asked of him. No ticket was checked. Jasmine's pulse ticked faster. Her voice remained calm, but the tension in her chest told a different story. "Is this really happening?" she whispered to herself. She began recording with her phone, her instincts sharper than ever. Every clipped word, every sidelong glance, every silence weighed more than the cabin air. The rest of the flight passed in an uncomfortable blur. While other passengers sipped champagne and snoozed behind velvet curtains, Jasmine sat with her knees cramped against a tray table in economy. Wide awake, calculating something was off. Something bigger than a mix-up. And Jasmine Carter wasn't just a passenger. She was a storm in waiting, because some people get angry, others get even. And Jasmine? She was about to turn turbulence into a reckoning. The video went viral overnight. Clips of Jasmine Carter's quiet defiance, her calm voice questioning the flight crew, her steady hand holding the phone, filled social media feeds with outrage and empathy. #SeatForJasmine trended in 30 countries. Activists, influencers, news anchors, and everyday people were suddenly asking the same question. How does a first-class woman get sent to the back, while a man with no ticket gets the seat? But not everyone knew Jasmine Carter had a sister. Amara Carter wasn't famous. Not yet. A third-grade teacher in Detroit with a soft voice and a steel spine, Amara had always lived in her sister's shadow. She was used to cheering Jasmine on from the sidelines, clapping the loudest and loving the fiercest. But this time, the spotlight turned, and Amara walked right into it. Because when Amara watched the footage of her sister's humiliation on that plane, she didn't cry. She burned at 3:17 a.m. Amara opened her laptop and began to write. The cursor blinked, waiting. She didn't pause to consider the risks. She didn't stop to soften the words. She wrote what needed to be said, not as a sister, but as a witness. They didn't see Jasmine. They saw a black woman and made her invisible. But my sister will not be erased, and I will not be silent. She hit post.by sunrise. Her words had traveled further than she ever had. News outlets began quoting her. Students at her school sent her messages of support. One note in crayon read, "Ms. Carter, I hope your sister gets her seat back and they say sorry." But the love wasn't the only thing that came. So did the hate. Emails flooded her inbox. Anonymous threats. Accusations. One called her a troublemaker who's just stirring the pot. Another said, "You people always make it about race." Amara's hands shook, but not with fear. With resolve at her school, the principal pulled her aside. "Amara," he said gently, "I support you, but the district is getting calls. Maybe you should take a few days off, just to let things calm down." Let things calm down. As if silence had ever saved anyone. "No," she said. "I'll be at my desk tomorrow." That night, Jasmine called. Her voice cracked through the phone. "I didn't want this for you." "And I didn't want it for you," Amara replied, her voice soft but unshakable. "But we don't get to choose what happens to us. We do get to choose what we do next." Jasmine didn't speak for a moment. Then, quietly, "You always were the brave one." Amara smiled through tears. "No, I was just waiting for the moment to be brave for." The next day, Amara stood before her class. Her eyes swept over her students, bright, curious, full of questions they didn't yet know how to ask. "Sometimes," she told them, "you have to speak up when something is wrong. even if your voice shakes, even if people don't like it, especially then. One small hand rose in the front row. Are you in trouble, Miss Carter? Amara paused. I'm in truth, she answered. The video from the plane continued to echo. Airline officials released a bland statement. We are reviewing the incident. The man who took Jasmine's seat? Silent, hidden, protected. But Amara? Amara stood on a small wooden stage at a community center days later, speaking to a packed room of strangers who'd come to listen. This is bigger than a seat on a plane, she said. It's about every time we've been told to move, to wait, to be quiet. My sister did everything right, and still they tried to make her small. But she's not small. None of us are. People cheered. Others wept. Phones recorded every word. Amara Carter, the soft-spoken teacher, had become a voice millions didn't know they needed, and with every word, she carried Jasmine closer to justice. But change never comes without consequence. Late one night, Amara returned home to find her front door marked in red spray paint. Liar. The air seemed colder, the shadows deeper. She stood frozen on her porch. For a moment, fear crawled up her spine, but only for a moment. She took a photo of the vandalism, posted it with a single caption. Truth doesn't need to shout, but it will not be silenced. Her community rallied. Neighbors cleaned her porch before sunrise. Local news crews covered the story. And the school board, under pressure, released a statement in full support of Amara. Jasmine watched from her apartment, tears streaming down her face. Why do they hate us so much for telling the truth? She asked quietly. Amara's answer came in a whisper. Because when we speak, they can't pretend not to hear us anymore. And so, Amara kept speaking. To classrooms, to town halls, to hearts that had been waiting too long for a voice like hers. She wasn't trying to be famous. She wasn't trying to start a movement. She was simply standing in the space where silence used to be. And that, more than anything, was what made the world listen. The pressure became unbearable. It had been 9 days since Jasmine Carter was forced from her first-class seat. 9 days since her sister Amara shattered the silence. 9 days of public outrage, private pain, and sleepless nights. Now, finally, the airline had to answer at a sleek press conference held behind polished wood podiums and corporate smooth voices. A spokesperson for Sky America Airlines faced the cameras. He looked calm, too calm. We are taking this matter very seriously, he said. An internal investigation has been launched. We are committed to equity and transparency. But Jasmine, watching from home, heard what he didn't say. No apology, no admission, no truth. Her hands curled into fists on the couch. They're just buying time. Amara sat beside her, jaw clenched. Not if we take it from them. That evening, Amara posted a public call. Who was on flight 227? If you saw what happened, if you heard anything, please come forward. We're not alone. Within hours, messages trickled in. By morning, they were pouring. I sat 2 rows back. I heard the flight attendant say, "We can't upset Mr. Dalton." I didn't understand what was happening at the time, but now I realize. They gave him her seat. No question. That wasn't protocol. I've flown Sky America for 12 years. They never move someone from first class unless it's a security issue. Jasmine did nothing wrong. Still, Sky America remained silent until he spoke. Jonathan Dalton. Wealthy, white, powerful. CEO of a major tech firm. The man who had taken Jasmine's seat. He issued a carefully written statement. I had no knowledge of any injustice taking place. I simply followed the crew's direction. I regret any distress this situation has caused. The world read between the lines. Jasmine read through them. How do you take something that doesn't belong to you and call it following directions? She said, her voice trembling. But Amara's voice was firm. He knew. They all knew. They needed proof. And then, like fate finally tilting toward justice, it came. A whistleblower. A young Sky America employee, terrified but brave, sent an encrypted message to Amara. I can't stay silent. I was on the operations team. I saw the internal chat log from Flight 227. They targeted her. They moved her because Dalton called in a favor. Attached was a screenshot that it was blurry. hurried but damning. Agent B. Dalton needs 1A. She's refusing. Want me to escalate? Agent D. Yeah, get her out. Quietly if you can. Agent B. Got it. Passenger will be reassigned. Jasmine stared at the screen, her breath caught in her throat. It was like reading the moment her dignity was erased. One keystroke at a time, tears welled in her eyes. They planned it like I was a problem to solve. Amara wrapped her arms around her sister. They made a plan. Now we make ours. Amara took the evidence to a journalist. Maya James, an award-winning reporter known for exposing corporate injustice. Maya read the message twice. Then she looked up, her expression hard. This isn't just misconduct. This is coordinated discrimination. Within 48 hours, Maya's expose hit the front page of the Sentinel. Exclusive. Leaked messages reveal Sky America colluded to remove black woman from first-class seat. The story exploded. News anchors demanded answers. Protesters gathered outside Sky America's headquarters. Politicians weighed in. A congressional committee announced a formal inquiry. And for the first time, Sky America flinched. They issued a second statement, this time naming Jasmine. We sincerely apologize to Ms. Carter for the distress caused. The incident was not reflective of our values. The employees involved have been placed on leave pending a full investigation. But it was too late for damage control. This was no longer about an airline. It was about all the invisible hands that move women like Jasmine out of line. About the whispers in boardrooms and backrooms that say, she doesn't belong here. It was about history and reckoning. That night, Jasmine finally spoke. Sitting in her living room, surrounded by candles, she filmed a short video on her phone. Her voice shook, but she didn't hide it. I was humiliated in public. I was told, without words, that my seat, my dignity, my presence wasn't worth defending. But I am still here, and I'm not just speaking for me. I'm speaking for every person who's ever been told they're too loud, too angry, too black, too much, for daring to exist in a space someone else decided wasn't theirs. She paused, eyes shimmering. I will not accept your apology without your accountability. You don't get to erase what happened to me, but you will remember it. The video reached millions in hours, and in thousands of homes, people cried, not because they were weak, but because someone finally said what they had always felt. Amara and Jasmine sat together on the balcony that night, watching the city lights shimmer. You were always the fighter, Jasmine whispered. And you were always the fire, Amara smiled. The investigation was far from over, but the silence, that was finished, forever. The storm Jasmine never asked for had come, and now she was standing in the middle of it, calm, unshaken, ready. The public pressure on Sky America had reached a boiling point. Major news networks replayed clips of her video every hour. Influencers, politicians, and celebrities joined the chorus, calling for action. But amid the noise, one thing was clear. Jasmine Carter was not just a victim. She was becoming a movement. On a crisp Monday morning, Jasmine and Amara walked into a downtown law office. Cameras flashed outside the glass doors, but inside, it was all business. Their attorney, Raina Flores, had sharp eyes and sharper resolve. She'd taken down companies before, but this case, it felt personal. They thought you'd be quiet, Raina said, folding her hands across the table. They thought they could move you like luggage, but they forgot one thing: you're not carrying baggage. You're carrying truth. She slid a document across the table. Jasmine's name was written in bold at the top. A lawsuit. Civil rights violation. Discrimination. Emotional distress. Defamation. It was time to strike back. The moment Jasmine filed the lawsuit, the world shifted. Sky America's board went into emergency meetings. Their stocks dipped. Social media exploded. The airline's legal team tried to spin the story, calling it a misunderstanding, claiming standard protocol, offering settlements in private. Jasmine turned them all down. She didn't want their money. She wanted their accountability. Meanwhile, more truths began to surface. A retired Sky America pilot reached out anonymously. We were told to prioritize select passengers. You know what that meant? I regret staying silent all those years. Then a former gate agent spoke out. I was reprimanded for questioning why a black mother and her daughter were reassigned to economy last Christmas. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how deep it went. One by one, their stories unraveled the airline's carefully guarded image. And Jasmine? She carried every story like a flame. Then came the turning point. A leaked internal memo. Not meant for the public. But someone made sure it found its way to Reina. If Carter won't take the deal, we delay the proceedings, discredit her in the media, and push for a private arbitration. The words hit Jasmine like cold water. They're trying to break me. Amara shook her head. No, they're showing you that you scare them. And that's when Jasmine knew. This fight was bigger than her, so she did something radical. She opened her courtroom. Jasmine began live streaming her journey. Not the legal secrets, but the heart of the process. The late nights, the quiet tears, the letters from strangers, the moments she wanted to give up, but didn't. She called the series My Seat at the Table. The first video went viral. They tried to take a seat. I'm building a table. Millions watched. Mothers, daughters, activists, survivors. Some shared their own stories. Others just listened. And in those moments, Jasmine wasn't just telling her truth. She was helping others reclaim theirs. The courtroom was packed on the first day of the hearing. Reporters crowded outside. Protesters held signs. We see you, Jasmine. Seats are not skin-dependent. We are not moving. Inside, Jasmine sat in a navy blue suit, hands folded, spine straight. Her heartbeat thundered, but her eyes never wavered. Sky America's lawyer tried to argue procedure, policy, miscommunication, but Jasmine's team had the receipts. The messages, the memo, the patterns, and then they brought up the whistleblower. The courtroom fell silent as the young employee took the stand, voice shaking but steady. They said Mr. Dalton was a special case. We were told not to argue. Just do it quietly. Jasmine felt the tears sting her eyes. Not from pain, from truth finally spoken out loud. When it was Jasmine's turn to testify, the room held its breath. She looked at the judge, then at the jury, then at the sea of people who had come to witness this moment. I was told to give up my seat. No reason, no apology, no justification. I was humiliated, diminished. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't alone. I carry the strength of women who were told to wait quietly. I carry the anger of every person who's ever been told they were in the wrong place just for daring to be seen. That I didn't want to be part of a fight. But now that I'm in it, I will not back down. The courtroom was still when she finished. But in the back row, a woman sobbed. And beside her, a young man whispered, "That's my story too." Outside the courthouse, the sky began to darken, clouds swelling with spring rain. But Jasmine stood there on the steps, calm in the storm once again. She had struck back, not with vengeance, with truth, with courage, with fire. And whether the judge ruled in her favor or not, Jasmine had already won something deeper. She had reclaimed her voice, and no one would ever move her again. The courtroom battle may have started with one seat, one flight, but now, it was the whole system that began to shake. Jasmine's testimony ignited something deeper than headlines. It cracked open hidden layers that had been cemented for years, layers of injustice, bias, and buried silence. The world had watched her stand tall. Now it was watching the fallout. Less than a week after Jasmine's court appearance, something extraordinary happened. A group of former Sky America employees, pilots, flight attendants, even low-level HR staff filed a class action lawsuit. Not just against the airline, but against the Aviation Regulatory Board that had allegedly ignored repeated internal complaints. One of the plaintiffs, a veteran flight attendant named Marcus Ellis, spoke publicly. We reported the patterns. We saw the profiling. But every time we spoke up, we were silenced or transferred. We didn't realize how many of us there were. Until Jasmine showed us we weren't alone. The dominoes had begun to fall. Investigations were launched. Internal memos surfaced, some dating back years. One email, in particular, drew nationwide outrage. Boarding protocol must reflect passenger profile priority. Public image matters. Limit visibility of complaints. Translation: make the problems disappear, not solve them, hide them. The Department of Transportation responded swiftly, launching a federal audit of 5 major airlines, including Sky America. As the headlines grew darker, Jasmine received another message, this time from someone unexpected: Robert Dalton, the man who had taken her seat. The email was short, polite, almost hesitant. Ms. Carter, I've been following the news. I want to apologize not just for what happened that day, but for not realizing the weight of my silence. I'd like to meet you, if you're open to it. Jasmine stared at the message for a long time. Her heart tightened, not from anger, but from the complication of emotion. She didn't reply right away. She wasn't sure if she ever would. Meanwhile, Jasmine's own case was drawing to a close. Inside the courtroom, tension hung thick. Sky America's attorneys looked exhausted. Their strategies had collapsed. Their witnesses faltered. Their evidence twisted, and then came the jury's verdict. The room was silent as the foreperson stood. We find in favor of Ms. Jasmine Carter. The words hit like thunder. Applause erupted. Tears spilled. Jasmine covered her face, shoulders trembling. Amara held her hand so tight it almost hurt, but Jasmine didn't let go. The court awarded significant damages, but more than the money, it was the precedent. The world had heard her and believed her. In the following weeks, change swept across the industry. Airlines began retraining staff on implicit bias. Passenger rights advocates formed alliances across states. Oh, and most importantly, the public was watching. But for Jasmine, the victory came with a quieter cost. She received hundreds of messages, some uplifting, others hateful. There were sleepless nights, panic attacks, moments she questioned if speaking out had been worth it. One night, as rain beat against her bedroom window, Amara found her sitting on the floor, back against the wall. I didn't want to be this, Jasmine whispered. I just wanted to take my daughter to see her grandmother. I didn't ask for all this. Amara knelt beside her, wrapping her arms around her. I know, but maybe the fight found you because you were strong enough to carry it. Jasmine wept, not just from exhaustion, but from relief. She wasn't alone anymore. Then came the biggest surprise yet. The president issued a formal statement, naming Jasmine as a citizen catalyst, a title given to individuals who spark national change through bravery and truth. Jasmine didn't make a speech. She didn't want a medal. Instead, she donated the majority of her settlement money to launch a nonprofit. Its name? Open Skies. A foundation dedicated to protecting passengers' rights, empowering whistleblowers, and ensuring no one is ever removed from a seat they earned because of who they are. Her mission was clear: to rebuild the system from the inside out. 1 month later, Jasmine finally responded to Robert Dalton's email. They met at a quiet coffee shop downtown. No cameras, no microphones, just 2 people face to face with history between them. Robert was older than she remembered. His hands shook slightly as he spoke. I didn't know what was happening that day. I just complied. I didn't think to ask why. And that's what keeps me up at night now. Not the injustice, but how normal it felt at the time. Jasmine nodded slowly. That's how it survives. When we accept silence as neutral. They didn't become friends, but they parted with something even deeper: understanding. Later that year, Jasmine returned to the airport where it all began. This time, she didn't fly commercial. She had been invited to speak at the unveiling of a new diversity training program for aviation staff nationwide. As she stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd, she spotted Amara in the front row, beaming with pride. Jasmine took a breath. They tried to take my seat once, but what they didn't realize was when you try to move someone out of place, you give them a reason to plant roots. And those roots grow. They grow into justice, into community, into change. The room stood as one, erupting into applause. Tears welled in Amara's eyes, and Jasmine, she smiled. Not because she'd won, but because everyone else finally could. Years later, Jasmine Carter's name wasn't just remembered, it was respected. Not because she shouted the loudest or because she fought the longest, but because she chose to stand when it was easier to sit down. Because she didn't just fight for herself. She fought for everyone who didn't have a voice. What started as a humiliating moment on a plane became the spark that ignited a movement. Jasmine's nonprofit, Open Skies, grew beyond her imagination. It didn't just help passengers. It trained airline staff, empowered young advocates, and supported hundreds of discrimination cases across the country. Airports were transformed. Policies were rewritten. Accountability became the new standard. But Jasmine never lost touch with who she was. She still walked through airports with Amara by her side, holding her hand, watching the people rush by. She still flew coach sometimes, even when she didn't have to. She still looked at every passenger like they mattered, because they did. In interviews, Jasmine always said the same thing. It was never about the seat. It was about the story behind the seat. The years of being made to feel small, invisible, or not enough. And that day, I just decided, no more. Her courage had ripple effects. Schools used her story to teach students about civil rights and social justice. Parents used it to teach their children the power of speaking up. Airlines used it as a turning point. But perhaps the most beautiful part of her legacy, Amara. Now a young adult, Amara carried her mother's fire in her own gentle way. She studied law, but her passion was storytelling. She launched a digital series titled Voices from the Aisle, where she shared real people's stories of quiet bravery. Stories that reminded viewers that even in the smallest spaces, change can take flight. In one of her most watched episodes, she looked directly into the camera and said, "My mother didn't just stand up on that plane. She stood up for the future. She taught me that silence protects no one. That truth isn't always comfortable, but it's always necessary. That justice is worth the turbulence." Viewers were captivated. They subscribed not just for the stories, but for the message, real, raw, and uplifting. People from all walks of life joined the conversation. Teachers, travelers, airport workers, even CEOs. It wasn't just a channel, it became a community. Amara always ended her episodes the same way. If this story moved you, don't just scroll, stand with us. Hit subscribe, share a story, and remind the world. We all deserve a seat. Let's keep flying forward, together. Jasmine, now older, watched proudly from behind the scenes. She never craved the spotlight. Her joy came from knowing she turned pain into purpose, fear into fuel, and silence into a symphony of voices. One evening, Amara asked her what she hoped people would remember most. Jasmine smiled, brushing a hand over her daughter's hair. That even the smallest act of courage can change everything. That ordinary people can do extraordinary things. And that when we rise, really rise, we carry others with us. Dear reader, if you've made it this far, thank you. Jasmine's journey may have started in a single seat, but it grew into something much bigger. Something that includes you. Her legacy reminds us to speak, to stand, and to believe in better. Whether you're facing your own challenge or simply watching from the sidelines. Know this. Your voice matters. If the story inspired you, please subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and help us spread the message. Because together, we're not just telling stories, we're making history. And there's always room for one more. See you in the next story.